sharing my screen here. Okay, whoops, that's my phone telling me to do this. And let's go ahead and share our screen. And this should work. I'm going to get you guys to let me know if it does. Can you guys see a slide that says how to boost progesterone naturally? Can somebody put a 1 in the chat if that is what you see, just to make sure that I am, yeah, give me, okay, thank you, Karen, for the thumbs up. All right, and if all is working well, I should also be live. You never know with these technical things, but I should be live on Facebook at the moment, so I'm just gonna quickly check and make sure, and it says I'm live, so beautiful. There we go, I am live. Okay, so we're gonna get going today. So this is our master class. So once a month, I'm doing a master class inside this group. I don't know how many of you are new. I know some familiar names, and there are some names that I haven't seen before, and maybe we haven't had a chance to chat yet. But basically, what we are going to be doing today is we're going to be doing our master class all about progesterone, and the topics are going to change from month to month. Sometimes it's going to be about hormones, sometimes it's going to be about metabolism, sometimes it'll be about intermittent fasting, sometimes it'll be about low carb nutrition. There's going to be all kinds of different topics. Today we're talking about progesterone, and honestly this is a little bit of a selfish one because I am currently starting to see some major dips in my progesterone. So I was like, okay, it's time for me to do a little extra research and see if there's anything that I'm missing here. So let's dive in. All right. Whoops, why is this not moving? Whoops. Okay, so goals for the workshop. So ultimately, what I want to do in the next 45 minutes is I want to teach you a little bit more, obviously, about progesterone, but also help you understand why women in perimenopause and also postmenopause, I'm talking mainly about perimenopause, but postmenopause too, often struggle with progesterone deficiencies or with low progesterone, which can cause a number of signs and symptoms, weight gain being one of them, but also insomnia, anxiety, and other stuff, which we're going to get into. So that's number one. And then number two, I want you to understand that when you understand how your body is changing, you can be proactive. You can take steps in order to look and feel your best, right? And ultimately, that is what I want to do with this group, is I want to empower women so that they understand what their body is doing and how they can change. Because I feel like with our nutrition and lifestyle, our habits, we have a lot of control over how we are going to experience perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause. If you do not know me yet, if you are brand new to the group, well, my name is Haley. I think you know that. But just so you know, I've been working, I'm 47. I am in perimenopause. I have been working in the health and wellness industry for about 12 years now. I'm a board certified health and wellness coach. And as you can see, I have taken a number of certifications and courses, really diving into the female metabolism and nutrition and functional nutrition and metabolism science. I am an ongoing learner. It is my passion. I wake up thinking about hormones and I go to bed thinking about them. So that's a little bit about me. But just so you know, like about, 12 years ago, really, or 11 years ago, I really knew nothing about hormones. And when I was about 35, I was really struggling with a number of things. I had a little bit of IBS. I had insomnia. I had hypoglycemia, like I would get shaky in between meals. I also struggled with infertility. So my husband and I tried to get pregnant right around the age of 35. I had 3 miscarriages until I finally got pregnant when I was 40. If only then I knew what I knew now. I'm pretty sure that a lot of that had to do with low progesterone, amongst other things. But suffice to say, back then, I really did not know anything about hormones. I certainly didn't even know that progesterone existed. And maybe this is a term or a hormone that you've only started learning about recently. Or maybe some of you are here because you're like, I don't even know what progesterone is. So totally fine. I did not know either. Okay. But again, since 2012, I've been working with a lot of different women. I've been essentially as a personal trainer, as a nutrition coach, and my specialty is certainly weight loss in women, and now weight loss in women over 40, and just helping women feel their best, really. It's not just about the weight loss. It's also about just feeling our best. I've worked with all kinds of women with hypothyroidism, PCOS, food addictions, type 2 diabetes, all kinds of autoimmune conditions. I've worked with all of them. And if I can share one thing with you, is that in working with all of these women, what I've come to realize is that the whole calories in, calories out model for weight loss does not work. And it's not that it's wrong, because as I say to my clients, you still need to be in a caloric deficit in order to lose weight, but it's incomplete. And it's incomplete because it doesn't take into account the impact that our hormones have on A, the calories that we take in, or our ability to control it, and B, what our body does with those calories. So whether our body takes those calories and stores them as fat, whether our body takes those calories and uses it to build muscle, right? Hormones play a major role here. And this is especially true in perimenopause, because this is when all of our hormones are changing, right? Okay, so with that being said, now they have a little bit of a sense about who I am. For those of you, I know not everyone here is here to lose weight. Some of you are just here to learn about hormones, which is totally cool. I do want to educate you. And for those of you that do want to lose weight, at the very end of the presentation, I'll dive a little bit more into sort of why weight loss is a little bit harder, what hormones are changing. And if you want to stick around, I'll also tell you a little bit more about my program that I have designed for women our age. Okay. All right. So let's dive in. So what are we going to be learning today? So again, today the topic is about how to boost progesterone naturally. So by naturally, I mean by using dietary and lifestyle habits or choices. And we're going to talk about what progesterone is and how it helps us look and feel our best. We're going to talk about the relationship between progesterone and estrogen, and I saw someone comment on that. We're also going to talk about what causes low progesterone, specifically in perimenopause, and I'll dive into postmenopause as well. And we're going to talk about some of the signs and symptoms to look out for that could indicate this is something that you need to look into further. We'll talk a little bit more about perimenopause and weight gain, and then we're going to dive into the practical strategies of what you can do to, again, naturally boost your progesterone levels. And at the very end, I will do a little bit of a chat on supplements and hormone replacement therapy, but that is not my area of expertise. My area of expertise is really nutrition and lifestyle, okay? All right. So let's dive in. So we're going to start by talking about what progesterone is. So progesterone, so we have multiple sex hormones. And I think when women think about sort of sex hormones as women, the main one we think about is estrogen, right? There are sort of like two main female sex hormones that regulate your menstrual cycle. Estrogen is one of them, and the other one is progesterone, okay? And progesterone, basically, we start to produce it. So when we get halfway through our cycle and we ovulate, the egg is, the follicle is released. When it bursts open and releases the egg, our bodies produce something called the corpus luteum, and this is where progesterone comes from. And within our menstrual cycle and within fertility, it's designed to help our body sort of prepare for pregnancy. It's preparing our uterus for pregnancy. Now, this is what a lot of women don't understand, is that while yes, it is important for pregnancy, it does a whole lot more. So even though you may not have any interest in having babies right now, you still want progesterone, okay? So below you can see some of the other things that progesterone does. So number one, it's your feel-good hormone. It's your woo-ha hormone. It's the one that helps you relax, that helps you unwind. That is super key. It also protects you against the harmful effects of cortisol. So cortisol is your is your stress hormone, but it also happens to be one of those fat storing hormones. And there is a direct link between progesterone and cortisol. So as progesterone levels dip, cortisol levels tend to go up. We'll talk more about that later. Progesterone is also really key for sleep. And I can attest to this because once again, in my 30s, I really struggled with insomnia. And one of the ways that I got myself out of insomnia was by taking bioidentical progesterone. Progesterone is also important in that it helps your body to metabolize fat. Okay, so again, this is we'll talk more about that later, but this is where it kind of ties into weight management. It also protects your bones, right? As we are moving into menopause and into postmenopause, we are at risk of osteoporosis. And both of our sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, both protect our bone density. So yes, we want it. It also plays a role in the proper functioning of your thyroid. Your thyroid, if that's a new term, is basically, you can think of it as sort of like the engine in your body. This is what determines how many calories you burn in a day. It can be slow or it can be fast. We want it to be fast. Okay. And then finally, and this is potentially one of the most important things, is that progesterone protects us against the effects of estrogen, because when estrogen gets out of control, it is not a good thing. And we're going to dive into that next. So you can kind of think of progesterone and estrogen as yin and yang. Okay. And you can think of estrogen as the wild child, the one that can get out of control. And you can think of progesterone as like the sort of like the sensible homebody who's just like, hey, estrogen, that's not a great idea. Okay. I want you to just kind of think of that as a visual. Okay. So when your hormones are balanced, right? We always hear like, oh, I want to balance my hormones. So when your hormones are balanced, then the ratio of estrogen to progesterone is in check. But what can happen, and what happens a lot in perimenopause, is that estrogen goes up and progesterone comes down. And now that ratio, the relationship where the ratio of progesterone to estrogen is out of balance. And now we are in what we call estrogen dominance, okay? And this just kind of, I really like this one because it yin and yang. So if you compare like the purple, right, the estrogen, the effects of estrogen with the blue effects of progesterone, you can see that it's almost like they have almost the opposite effect, right? And once again, progesterone, like estrogen is a very strong hormone. Progesterone's a bit of a weaker hormone, but it keeps estrogen in check, okay? So why are we experiencing low progesterone as women in, and consequently estrogen dominance, right? And this is sort of like what I want to kind of make sure that you guys understand, is that for a lot of women, perimenopause is a time of estrogen dominance. And I think that this is where the Google kind of misleads us, because when women start to notice signs and symptoms of perimenopause or menopause, they'll go online and they'll Google it, and everyone's talking about low estrogen and hot flashes and, you know, like all these different signs of low estrogen. But in reality, I think it's just, we're not using the right terms, because there are different phases of this whole transition. There is perimenopause, there's menopause, and then there's postmenopause, right? Perimenopause, which are the years that lead up to the menopause transition, is actually a phase of our life where we have more estrogen, not less. And I'll show you guys a diagram because it's really helpful here. So this just kind of shows you exactly what is happening to both progesterone and estrogen as we are sort of like cruising through perimenopause. So you can see that like sort of like around the age of sort of 35, progesterone starts to really go down. And this one's slightly exaggerated. I think this is probably a bit less of a curve, but progesterone really starts to go down. Whereas estrogen, as you can see, like it goes all over the place and sometimes is higher. Right. And this is why from 1 week to the next, we're like, am I going crazy? And it's because your estrogen can be up or it can be down. You never really know. Okay. But what I want you to understand is that progesterone is dropping faster than estrogen. And therefore, that puts us in estrogen dominance. And number two, the other thing I want you to understand is that as we move through perimenopause, we start to have anovulatory cycles. And that just means that we are not ovulating, right? Because our ovaries, they're going into retirement and they stop functioning as well. So we don't have an ovulation every single cycle. Sometimes we skip an ovulation. And if you remember what I said, when you ovulate, you release the follicle, that pops open, turns into the corpus luteum. That's where the progesterone comes from. So when you don't ovulate, you're not producing progesterone. So that's number one. The second super big cause is stress, chronic stress, physical and mental. And we're going to be diving into stress, but I can pretty much guarantee that I would say 95% of the women here are all chronically stressed. I think that we live in a time where women are just doing way too much. And if you don't believe me, read the book by Dr. Libby Weaver called Rushing Women's Syndrome. It's going to open your eyes, okay? But chronic stress. Now, chronic stress is going to affect our progesterone levels in two ways. Number one, when your body, when your brain and your metabolism sense stress, the first thing that your hypothalamus is going to do is going to say, hey, you know what, guys? We do not need to have any kind of production of sex hormones. Let's tone it down. This is not a great time to have a baby, okay? And then the other thing that happens that's really important, again, for perimenopause that we need to understand is that your adrenals, which also produce your stress hormones, they also produce progesterone, okay? And so they're produced in the ovaries, but they're also produced in the adrenals. And the adrenals become more and more and more important as our progesterone levels decline, because it becomes the major source of production. Now, with that understanding, the other thing you need to understand is that if your body senses stress, and we're going to talk about what that looks like, it will always prioritize the production of cortisol over the production of progesterone. And this is why it can really deplete your progesterone levels. Does that make sense? If you guys can give me a thumbs up or put a 1 in the chat if everyone is following me so far. Thank you, Tara. I appreciate that. I can't see everyone's face, but and thank you, Diane. Thank you. All right. And I'm getting some thumbs up on Facebook too. Awesome. Thank you, ladies. Okay, let's keep going here. All right. Whoops. Let's see. Okay, we've done this one. Okay, so let's talk about signs and symptoms to look out for. So there are signs of low progesterone, and then there are signs of high estrogen or estrogen dominance. So we're going to look at both of them. So low progesterone, this is like just anxiety. And a lot of women going through perimenopause notice that their anxiety levels go up, right? You're just not comfortable in your own skin. And it's just like, you just wake up. Like, this is why so many women go on Prozac in perimenopause, right? We become more anxious. We have a harder time just handling stress. And this goes back to the fact that, again, as progesterone dips, we have more cortisol. We can't handle stress the same way that we used to. We also potentially have elevated cortisol. And this is not something you can see. It's probably something that you need to test, but I would say, just assume that you probably have high cortisol. Insomnia and poor sleep, as I was describing in my 30s, insomnia and poor sleep, those are two signs of low progesterone. And then any sign of estrogen dominance. When it comes to estrogen dominance and low progesterone, if you have signs of estrogen dominance, it could be that progesterone is normal and estrogen is high, or it could be that estrogen is normal and progesterone is low. And in perimenopause, that's probably the case, okay? And we won't do a deep dive into estrogen dominance today, but we can do that another time. So estrogen dominance, signs and symptoms. One is weight gain, specifically belly fat. So there are kind of like three main hormones that are going to encourage the body to store fat around your belly. Estrogen is one of them. The other one is insulin and cortisol, okay? Water retention, breast tenderness. So if you're finding that in specifically in the second half of your cycle, when you're supposed to have more progesterone, if you're starting to notice that your breasts are more tender, that could be a sign of low progesterone. If you have more PMS, if you're more irritable, especially again in that second half of your cycle, if you're starting to have irregular periods, maybe they're shorter, maybe they're longer, maybe they're heavier, or more sort of serious conditions like fibroids or fibrocystic breasts or ovarian cysts, PCOS, which is a hormonal imbalance, breast cancer, endometriosis, right? So these are all potential signs of, again, there's an imbalance between your estrogen levels and your progesterone levels. Okay, so let's kind of talk a little bit more about progesterone and weight, because I am a weight loss coach and I did want to kind of touch on that today. So understand that progesterone it's not one of our main fat burning hormones, but it has an indirect impact on the hormones that do have a big impact on our weight. Okay. Whoops, I see someone is not muted. If you can just check that you're muted, I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right, so progesterone, some of the different ways in which it's going to impact our ability to lose weight is its influence on insulin, on thyroid, on estrogen, and on cortisol. Okay. It also impacts inflammation and mood. So one of the things that progesterone does is it helps to control our blood sugar levels, right? And this protects us against insulin resistance, which is going to cause weight. Like I said before, it helps our body use fat as energy. It supports the proper functioning of our thyroid, which again is really important in determining your overall metabolic rate, or how many calories you burn on a daily basis. It has anti-inflammatory effects. It keeps us calm. It protects us against cortisol, that fat storing hormone. It puts us in a better mood, and it protects us against estrogen dominance, which again is one of those hormones that encourage the body to store fat. Okay, this here, I wanted to show you this, and you'll see why this is important as we move into what we're going to do about it. But this is the hormonal hierarchy. So I did not come up with this. I got this from Dr. Anna Kabeka, who also happens to help women in perimenopause and menopause with weight loss. And it's just this idea, it's just to give you this visual of understanding how there are certain hormones that have a bigger impact. So the base, you can see there's insulin, and there is adrenal hormones, which is cortisol, and then thyroid, and then at the top, sex hormones, which would be like progesterone and estrogen. What you need to understand is that there's a trickle effect, right? And it doesn't just go one way. So insulin and cortisol affect thyroid, affects sex hormones, but they also affect the base. Like our hormones are kind of like more like this big interconnected web. But still, when we want to address sort of like getting our hormones in balance and using like a hormones first approach to weight loss, those are the two kind of big ones that we need to deal with, but we have to understand that progesterone has an effect on them. Okay. All right. We're going to dive into how we can optimize premenopause and postmenopause with both dietary and lifestyle strategies. And what we need to understand is that we cannot reverse the effects of aging. If I knew how to do that, I would be a millionaire. I do not know how to do that. There is no way to stop the decline of progesterone. It's going to happen. It starts to happen when you're about 35. There's nothing we can do to stop that unless you decide to take a bioidentical progesterone. But what we can do is we can support our bodies. We can avoid anything that would further deplete progesterone, and we can give our body the nutrients it needs to maximize the production. Does that make sense? So those are the two things that we're going to look at. We're going to look at how we can avoid anything that further depletes progesterone, and then we're going to look at how we can provide support to maximize progesterone production. So let's start off with how we can avoid depleting progesterone. So like I said at the beginning, the two main causes in perimenopause of low progesterone, one is aging and the other one is chronic stress. And I said I was going to come back to stress. So now we're just going to look at what is stress. So what we want to do, or the whole goal here, is we want to avoid physical and mental that elevate cortisol. That's what we want to avoid.
Can you go down and tell the boys they have to start getting ready for soccer?
Can you put yourself on mute, please? Thank you so much. Okay. All right. We're good. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to avoid anything that is going to elevate cortisol, because like I said, if we've got more cortisol, we've got less progesterone, because the body will always prioritize cortisol. So that means managing our stress, and that means giving our adrenals as much support as possible. Okay. I'm not going to do a deep dive here. I could talk about this for 2 hours really. But I want to give you like just some of the major stressors that I think women in perimenopause are facing. The first one is dietary stress. And dietary stress can come from all kinds of things. It can come from food sensitivities. It can come from inflammatory foods. It can come from excessively low caloric diets, or it can come from glycemic dysregulation. And this is a really important one to understand, because again, in perimenopause, we have a tendency towards insulin resistance. And this gets worse and worse as we're moving into sort of like the main transition, like that final year, and then post-menopause. So dietary stress in the form of glycemic dysregulation, which is essentially poor blood sugar management, insulin resistance, that kind of stuff, right? Exercise stress. So too much exercise or too intense. Perceived stress is a pretty obvious one, right? Mental or emotional stress, not having any kind of coping mechanisms, not having any kind of stress management tools. And then circadian stress. Circadian just means like if your body is in tune with just like the circadian rhythm of day and night, right? So not getting enough sleep, getting poor sleep, if you're a shift worker, any of those things, okay? So we're going to look at 3 of them. I'm not going to dive into mental stress today because that's a whole big thing, but I'm going to kind of dive into each of them just a little bit. I'm going to talk about dietary stress first. And again, here, insulin resistance. If you remember the hormonal hierarchy that I was showing you, insulin is right at the very base. And just to kind of show you the relationship between insulin resistance and low progesterone. So women that have PCOS, so PCOS, typically they are estrogen dominant. They typically have anovulatory cycles, so they are low progesterone because they're not ovulating, so they're not producing as much progesterone, and typically they have insulin resistance. Okay, and studies suggest that if you can improve insulin sensitivity in women with PCOS, you can drastically increase progesterone production. So there is a very important tie between insulin and progesterone. So one of the things that we want to do is get insulin under control. My favorite way of doing that is low carb nutrition. We'll kind of dive into that a little bit, but that's again a whole other topic. But just understand that one of the things you want to do is you want to manage insulin, and one of the ways you can do that is by getting rid of refined carbohydrates, getting rid of sugar, starting to create more glycemically balanced meals with protein and vegetables and high fiber carbs. Okay. Whoops, someone is again. Whoops, there we go. Okay. All right, so that is the first thing. We want to avoid dietary stress. The next thing we want to do is we want to avoid exercise stress, okay? So another way to help you conceptualize this, so there's this thing called REDS, which is called Relative Energy Deficiency in Sport. It used to be called the Female Athlete Triad. And basically this is what you see in women that diet too hard and exercise too much. They take it to the extreme. They literally lose their period. And you see this like a typical sort of scenario of what this would look like would be, sorry, I'm just trying to mute Jamie here. A typical scenario of what this would look like is like a bodybuilder, a female bodybuilder or a woman entering a fitness competition who takes her body to like very extreme levels of fat. And these women will oftentimes completely lose their period. Like it's gone. They go into early menopause, okay? So that's really, really important to understand. And so the idea exercise is really, really great, but too intensive an exercise will impact your sex hormones and it will start to drop your progesterone levels. So what I recommend is 30 to 60 minutes, 4 times a week. Okay, 30 to 60 minutes, 4 times a week, and then as much walking as you want. That's sort of like where I like to see women. In my program, we do 3 30-minute workouts, and then we do lots of walking. That's all they do. We're not trying to like do an hour of cardio at the gym like 5 days a week. Okay. All right. Circadian stress. So I'm going to use myself as an example here because this is this is what happened to me. And here it's a little bit of like what came first, the chicken or the egg, because poor sleep will disrupt progesterone and low progesterone will disrupt sleep. So it's kind of like this vicious cycle, but working on your sleep can be really, really key in avoiding that circadian stress, in lowering cortisol, because if you get a poor night's sleep, you're going to have higher levels of cortisol. So getting your sleep in check. This is going to be a lifestyle habit that's going to be super, super important. We want 7 to 8 hours of solid sleep. I have done workshops on sleep before. You can go into the group and just search it and they'll come up. So I'm not going to dive into it here, but again, making sure that you can get that fixed. What I did is when I was 30, probably 39, 40, I went on bioidentical progesterone for 6 months. I got my sleep back on track. And then all of those signs and symptoms disappeared. Okay. It's also when I happened to have my child. So I had her when I was 41. Okay. So one more thing, I'm going to bring up one more here, which is mental stress and emotional stress. And just to give you a sense of how it affects your sex hormones. I was going to create a slide for this and I totally forgot. But again, going back to Dr. Annika Becca, who does a lot of work on women on perimenopause and menopause. So she has a really interesting story. When she was in her late 30s, she lost a child. And it was a very dramatic event. The child drowned in their pool. And so you can imagine how much emotional and mental stress that put this woman through. She went into early menopause. So she lost her cycle completely. And then she decided to figure out how to bring it back. And anyways, I won't go into the whole story, but, story short, the emotional and mental stress of losing her child threw her into menopause. She went on a big mission to heal her body and came back out of menopause. Okay. So if you are like, I'm already in menopause, is this normal? Maybe, maybe not. Stress might be something to look into. Okay. All right. So we're going to move into how to support progesterone. And this is where really we just want to talk about some of the nutrients that your body needs, especially in the luteal phase, which is the second half of your cycle. So nutrients that your body needs to produce progesterone. Okay. And you guys are all going to get the replay if you signed up, if you registered. And if you haven't registered, you can still go register because I won't send the replay out for a couple of days. So you'll have this because I'm going to give you like a list of foods, but healthy fats, vitamin B6, magnesium, zinc, and vitamin C. So we're going to look at these one after the other. So if you are a woman in perimenopause and if you think you have low progesterone or even low estrogen, please do not go on a low-fat diet because cholesterol is the building blocks of your hormones. So you need cholesterol to get pregnenolone, and you need pregnenolone to have progesterone. So we don't want low cholesterol. We don't want high cholesterol. We don't want bad cholesterol, but we don't want low cholesterol. We need cholesterol to build sex hormones. A lot of women don't realize this. You'll see below, I've put some of my favorite healthy fats that also happen to be anti-inflammatory. And again, you can catch this on the replay and get and take a note of this. Okay, vitamin B6. So vitamin B6 can both lower estrogen and increase progesterone. Okay, so it can help with also estrogen dominance. And you'll see again, once again, there's all a list of whole foods that are rich in B6 that you can jot down. You'll note that some of them I've highlighted. So the beans, bananas, prunes, and the potatoes, and those are sort of higher in carbohydrates. And I'll explain why I've highlighted them in a second here, but just know that anything highlighted, higher in carbs. Okay. You can, of course, supplement these things. Now, I don't know anyone here. I am not recommending any kind of supplements. This is information only because we don't have a relationship And typically when it comes to supplements, even with my own clients, I'm like, you need to talk to your doctor because it could contraindicate some of your other meds. Okay, so really important before you start supplements, talk to your doctor. Magnesium is another one. So magnesium is really good for your adrenals, which again is key to the production of progesterone, especially after perimenopause, because this is when the ovaries have now, they've called it quits and the adrenals have taken over. So we've got to support our adrenals. So eating magnesium rich foods on a daily basis is going to be super important. And again, you guys have got that list there, so you can come back and you can catch this. Okay. Vitamin C. Vitamin C can increase progesterone and it can intensify the effects of the progesterone that you have. So lots of vitamin C rich foods would be really good, or potentially supplementing with vitamin C daily. And then finally, zinc. So zinc, your body uses zinc to produce FSH. FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. This is what triggers your body to ovulate. So ovulation, corpus luteum, progesterone, this is why we need zinc. So once again, list of foods. I'm not going to go into each of them here. I won't read them out to you, or talk to your doctor about supplementing. Okay, so step 3. And I didn't put step 3 in the first 2 because it's kind of an advanced strategy. It requires more planning. It requires tracking your cycle. But basically, again, if you think of your cycle as having 2 phases, so it has the follicular phase and it has the luteal phase. The luteal phase is when you should have more progesterone. So if your cycle is normal, in the second half of your cycle, you are progesterone dominant, as opposed to in the first half when you are estrogen dominant. So in that second half, this is when we want to like give our body as best a chance as possible. So we want to avoid anything too stressful. And we want to, again, give our body all those nutrients. So if anyone that's listening practices intermittent fasting, I would recommend sort of like toning down your fasting practice, especially in days 19 to 23 of your cycle, when progesterone is sort of like when we want it as high as possible. 24-hour fast or even a 36-hour fast. I even like to keep it to 15 hours, maybe 16 max. This is when you want to boost your intake of progesterone foods, like progesterone building foods. So all the foods that I just showed you, you can go grab those lists. Slow down, chill out, take a nap, go for a nice walk. Maybe, avoid the intense workouts on these specific days. And again, if you're doing like a ketogenic diet, or if you're quite low carb, these are days where you want to like increase the production of increase your intake of smart carbs. So those foods that I had highlighted, these are days that you can add those in, specifically on these days, maybe pop out of ketosis for a little bit, to give your body, once again, the nutrients that it needs to boost the production. Okay. So the final thing here that I want to talk about is just, again, supplements and and hormone replacement therapy. You could certainly, do everything you can naturally. I think, especially if you can use these as preventative methods, knowing that all of this is going to happen. If you've started to notice the low signs, you can certainly do that. If you want to, you could also add in a supplement. The most researched supplement is called Vitex, or chaste berry. And that one has got a lot of research in that it supports the production of progesterone. So still pretty natural. And then the other option is hormone replacement therapy, which I know a lot of women are maybe not necessarily comfortable with, which is totally fine. I think here, there's a lot of misunderstanding of hormone replacement therapy. It's not my job to convince you to take it. This is a discussion that you need to have with your doctor. But what I can share with you is that in the past 6 years, as I have been learning more about hormone replacement therapy, some things that I've learned is that, number one, there's a difference between synthetic and bioidentical. So synthetic or artificial progesterone, this is actually, it's called progestin. And this is where, this is the form of progesterone that can typically be problematic, right? Or can have a harmful effect. Bioidentical progesterone is identical to the body. And if you're getting it in the right amounts, then you're not, it's not like you're over supplementing it with progesterone, and it should be safe for most women. But again, you need to talk to your doctor, and you need to find someone who really understands hormones, because when it comes to hormones, it's the Goldilocks principle: not too much, not too little, but just right. So while low progesterone can make you feel like crap, too much progesterone can also make you feel like crap. So you kind of got to get it balanced out. And I know someone in the chat was wondering about estrogen and progesterone and if you need to take them at the same time. My understanding, and again, I am not I'm not an expert in hormone replacement therapy, but from the literature that I have read, it is perfectly safe to take progesterone and not take estrogen, because again, a lot of women are actually estrogen dominant. And what is not recommended in women in perimenopause is estrogen without progesterone, but a lot of women end up getting that prescription. So if you have been prescribed estrogen for whatever reason, or maybe you're on birth control to like soothe your signs and symptoms, I would probably do some research and talk to your doctor and maybe even test your hormones to learn a little bit more, because you can go also to a really good resource is SEMCOR. I'll post the link, but it's the Center for Ovulation Research, and the woman who runs it. This is where I've read a lot that women in perimenopause may not do best if they are only given estrogen and not progesterone, because of the fact that we are already likely estrogen dominant. Okay. All right, so that covers that. I'm going to dive into just like explaining sort of the relation, and we're kind of taking a little bit of a turn here. I'm going to explain sort of the relationship between, why weight loss is harder for women our age, a little bit more about the hormones first approach, and also explain a little bit about my program. If you want to stick around, you can do that. The reason that in this phase of life, women do start to struggle with weight gain, right? Like it's pretty typical. And I think that a lot of us turn to these diets, right? These diets that promise us fat loss. And a lot of them, they're not giving our body what it truly needs. So what I want to explain is a little bit about what is happening, because I feel like if you understand, if you know what's happening to your body, then you can adapt your nutrition and your lifestyle to take all of these changes into account, right? So what I want to I just want to briefly, and we can break this down more, but just quickly look at what's happening here. So in your sort of like mid 30s, so when you're about 35, 40-ish, there are certain fat burning hormones, you can call them fat burning hormones, that start to dip, right? So testosterone, which yes, it's an important male hormone, but it's also important in women. Human growth hormone and progesterone, which we talked about today. Those are three hormones that facilitate fat loss, and they all start to decline as we hit 35, okay? And on top of that, we start to experience sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle mass loss. So we're just starting to lose our muscle mass. And muscle mass is the most metabolically active tissue in your body, which means we need a lot of calories to keep it there. When we start to see muscle mass go down, we start to see our metabolic rate also go down. And this explains, I'm sure you've heard that as you go over 40, you start to your metabolism starts to slow down. Well, it has a lot to do with sarcopenia and age-related muscle mass loss. So if we can protect that muscle mass, then we can protect our metabolism. But all of this makes fat loss harder. At the same time, as I was saying, insulin is going up, right? We become more insulin resistant. Cortisol is going up, and we're in a state of estrogen dominance. And those are the three fat storing hormones. And like I said, they're the ones that go straight to your belly, right? And on top of that, life is catching up. We all have our own metabolic identity, but the choices that you made in your 20s and in your 30s they're catching up to you now. And so you have probably had an impact on your insulin, on your leptin, on your thyroid, on your estrogen, on your progesterone from all of the decisions you made. So this is all catching up to us, and it makes weight gain a little bit easier. Okay, so you can kind of see how this it all kind of comes into play here. And then to top that off, as we're kind of moving through perimenopause, this is when a lot of women start to experience hypothyroidism, adrenal fatigue, inflammation, various autoimmune conditions. And so it's kind of like we're almost in this perfect storm of weight gain. And that's why a lot of women come to me for help, because they try to do their old tricks. They try to eat less and exercise more, and it doesn't work anymore because they have a different hormonal profile, and they're not being strategic about how they're eating and about how they're training. So I want to show you a couple of the clients that I've been working with. So this is Carmen. So Carmen is 43, so she is in perimenopause. And when she first came to me, she was doing exactly that. Like she was in her own words, she was starving herself, and she was like, this is not working. And she reached out to me for help. And I think in our first like 3 months together, she lost like 20 or 22 pounds. I can't remember. But anyways, we've been working together for well over a year now. She's now down 45 pounds. Okay, 45 pounds. And she's also eating way more than she ever was before. In fact, right now we're like, she's upping her exercise. So we upped her calories. She's probably eating about 2,300 calories a day. So again, proof that you do not have to starve yourself. This is another woman who came to me. This woman is in postmenopause. And like many women postmenopause, her doctor told you you're pre-diabetic, because again, a lot of women develop type 2 diabetes after menopause because insulin resistance goes up. So she came to me because she's like, okay, I need to make a serious change. I want to be around for a long time. I don't want to go on metformin. I don't want to have type 2 diabetes. So she came to me. She lost 30 pounds in 14 weeks. Her blood sugar levels normalized. Her doctor was thrilled and was like, just keep doing whatever you're doing. So again, she learned to work with her hormones. This is Alice. Alice came to me with, hypothyroidism. She had an autoimmune condition, adrenal fatigue, lots of inflammation, eating the wrong foods. So one of the first thing we did was stress management, right? I pulled her out of all of her high intensity workouts. I put her on an anti-inflammatory diet. We worked on her diet mentality, like getting out of the whole, like eat less, move more. She ended up, I can't remember how much she ended up losing, but she crushed her goal. She exceeded it in our first 3 months together. And this is another woman, just to give you a sense of like the different women that come to me. This is a different woman. This specific woman, as you can see, she didn't have much weight to lose, but it was all going straight to her belly, right? And she was just eating the wrong foods. Like she was drinking juice and pop and lots of like sugar and refined carbs. And so literally, again, learn how to work with her hormones. And you can see in 3 months, like we had a nice flat belly at the end, right? All right, so the point here is that if you learn how to be more strategic with your nutrition and with your lifestyle, you can influence your hormones. And if you influence your hormones, you get to influence calories in and calories out, which is what I explained way at the very beginning, right? So what I like to do with women is I teach them how to lower insulin, lower cortisol, lower estrogen, and I teach them how to boost human growth hormone and testosterone, and how to support their adrenals and how to support their thyroid. I teach them how to reduce inflammation by eliminating certain foods and prioritizing other foods. I teach them how to protect their muscle mass and boost their metabolism, because like I said, you want to slow down your metabolism, and you do not want to lose muscle mass because it will be next to impossible to keep the weight off. You have to try and eat as many calories as you can while losing weight. I say this to my clients all the time. And then finally, I teach them how to avoid the negative consequences of dieting. If you are continuously restricting your calories, your metabolism will downregulate. You're going to hit a plateau, and then you're going to give up because you get frustrated, and you're going to go back to eating the way you did before, and all the weight's going to come back on. I'm sure a lot of you are like, been there, done that, right? So that's sort of what I do. And perimenopause body sleep. It is 24 weeks because it is not a quick fix. It's not a diet. It's a lifestyle change. And it's where I personally coach women into learning how to take charge of their hormones. And I'll just show you a little bit about what it's about. So there are 3 different phases in the program. The first, I call it the Happy Hormones Reset. And the idea here is to create a smarter calorie diet as opposed to a lower calorie diet. This is when I teach women what to eat, what to avoid, how much protein, how many vegetables, how much fat, how to get like plenty of anti-inflammatory foods and avoid the stuff that's going to have a negative impact on their hormones. In this phase, women usually lose about 5 to 10 pounds, but I have seen women even recently lose over 20 pounds just in this phase alone. The second phase, I call it hormone sensitive fat loss. And the way that I like to see it is that in the first phase, we're kind of priming body for fat loss. And in the second phase, what we're doing is we're kind of, now that the hormones are ready, we're trying to optimize fat loss. And I use a lot of different strategies. And while I'm doing that, I'm also protecting the female hormones because women are more sensitive to caloric deficits. It's just the way it is. 2 of the strategies I use are carb cycling and hormone sensitive intermittent fasting. And I teach women different protocols so that they can learn how to do this all while supporting their bodies as they're changing. Usually women lose about 1 pound a week, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. The final phase, this is sort of like the big phase of the program. This is like the second half of it. We do something called intermittent energy restriction. And the idea here is that instead of doing continuous energy restriction, which, like I said, can be really detrimental to your metabolism, we alternate between periods of eating more and periods of eating less. And what this does is it just helps to make sure that we're not down-regulating the metabolism, that we're not hitting a plateau, that we are not going to experience rebound weight gain, and that we have a bit of we have a plan at the end. Like when you reach your goal weight, what a lot of women do is they just go back to eating the way they were before. You need to slowly transition out of a diet. Okay, so that's what we do. Again, typically 1 pound of weight loss per week. Now, what I'd like to point out is that this is not a dump a bunch of information on you and call it a day. Like, this is personal coaching. And so I walk women through this step by step. And what it looks like is that when you first sign up, we book a call, 90 minutes. This is an onboarding call where I teach you about all my systems, but we also do an initial assessment so that I can learn about your health history. I can learn about any hormonal imbalances that you know about. I can assess your skills. We can get like a good starting point. And then we talk to each other every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, you have a one-on-one call with me. Once a month, we'll do like a deeper dive. We'll look at like your sleep, your stress, your digestion, your mood. We'll look at energy cravings, all these things that give me a sense of what your metabolism is doing. We can adjust the protocol. We can talk about things that need to get tweaked. And then every 2 weeks, we do a mini check-in. And in these mini check-ins, it might be to talk about your mindset. It might be to talk about obstacles that are coming up. It might be to talk about questions about the program, whatever it may be. It is our time together where I can customize your program for you and help you, give you the support that you need. And in between all of those check-ins, you have all the support you need. You have direct, unlimited access to me. So again, this is personal coaching. I walk you through it. Now, on top of that, you also get a structured workout program. I call it Muscles for Menopause. And the idea here is that we want to burn fat, we want to build or at least protect our lean muscle, and we want to manage cortisol, right? Going back to do not exercise too much. And that's what Muscles for Menopause is. It's a structured workout program. You get full-length workout videos. It's all laid out on a calendar. You've got an app. You just pull it up in the morning. You know exactly what you're doing. 24 meal plans and over 150 recipes. So I wanted to basically take the guesswork out of this. I know women are busy. I know they don't have time to count calories and track macros. So I have literally created 24 weekly meal plans for each phase of the program. And I have been working on recipes. I'm up to over 150 and I'm continually adding to the library. The final thing that you get is access to, I call it the Slow and Steady Club. And this is our culture inside with all my clients, is that we are not about, this is not like a fad diet. It's not a quick fix. It's not about getting the fastest results possible. It's about slow and steady, permanent progress. And that's why we call it the Slow and Steady Club. And I go live inside that, inside our private Facebook group once a week. We pick a hot topic. It could be a deeper dive into hormones, metabolism, sleep, stress, other things that come up like constipation, or how to get more fiber into diet, or how to go camping and stay on the plan, various hot topics, but that's once a week. So now you might be wondering, okay, well, how much is this? And I'm going to start by saying it is not as much as you think. Of course, it depends what you're comparing it to. If you're comparing it to a, PDF that you can buy online for $37, you might think it's more expensive. But for personal coaching, I can tell you that it is nowhere near as expensive as you think. And I'm actually quite lower price than a lot of my competition. So a lot of people will charge you about $5,000 for a 12-week program. What I do is I usually do $400 a month. But I do have a promotion going on for the month of June because I know that it can be more challenging to commit. So I'm giving you a little extra incentive. So I'm taking 25% off that regular rate. So it is $300 a month. And with that, you get the 24-week curriculum, you get the one-on-one coaching, you get the Muscles for Menopause, the structured workout program, the meal plans, the recipes, the Slow and Steady Club, the hot topics, access to the app. You get all of it. And I'm going to throw in a little extra incentive. So if you guys are thinking, if you're like, oh, maybe I need this, I want you to take action now. And the first step is just to book a call with me. You're not committing to anything. You're not committing to buying. You're just committing to get on a call with me and tell me a little bit more about what's been going on in your life, what you're struggling with, what your obstacles are, what you've tried. And if I think I can help, I will tell you. If I don't, I will also tell you. You can ask me questions about the program. We can go over any concerns that you have. And if you book that call with me before the end of next week, I'm going to give you 1 free month of coaching. Okay, so you'll end up saving $1,000. So if you want to do that, the website, the link is right below. It's projectmenopause.ca/work with me. You can go there. You can watch videos of some of my clients. You can see more testimonials, more photos. You can see a description of the curriculum. But if you want to get the 1 month for free and get 25% off, book a call with me. By the end of next week, you will see a link on this page. And basically, we will chat for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. You make the decision. It is not a pressure sale. That is not the kind of person I am. I only want women in the program that are 100% committed, that feel like they've made the decision, because ultimately, I want all of my clients to get results. That is my goal, is that everyone walks away feeling like they are super happy. I even have a guarantee that if you join and you're not happy and you feel like you didn't make any progress, I'll give you your money back. So there we go. Do we have any questions, ladies, about either progesterone or about the program? So is there a danger of too much progesterone? Diane, I don't know if I would call it danger, but when you have a ton of if you have too much progesterone, it can cause depression. And I can tell you that because I've been there, because when I had my miscarriages, I had 3 miscarriages. So after the first one, the doctors put me on high dose progesterone to try and help me to save the pregnancies. And so they gave me like quite a high dose, and I was super depressed, like crying all the time. Everything felt overwhelming. Like I remember one time I sat in front of a pile of laundry and I just started like bawling because it just felt like it was too much. So I would say that, you're just not, like with all hormones, you got to get it just right. So yes, if you're having too much, you're probably not going to feel your best. All right. Any other questions about progesterone? I'm just checking here and I'm checking here. On Facebook, if you have any questions, please put them up. All right, any other questions? Okay, any questions about the program? Oh, Tara, go ahead and unmute yourself. I'm going to stop sharing here. And then
It's not quite about the program, but it's about the hormones.
yeah.
Like, so I had my doctor do a blood test to see where my hormones were, because I thought my estrogen was getting high because I was getting weepy, crying, right? Like I cried over, Arnold Schwarzenegger, The Last Action Hero, right? Comedy. And over the last 3 or 4 years, my breasts have started growing again.
Yeah.
So would that be high estrogen? Because he said my levels are within range, they're normal.
Did he test your progesterone?
I don't know. He did a blood test.
Okay.
So he said it was all within normal range.
Okay. So again, you could have normal estrogen and low progesterone and still be estrogen dominant, right? And then it depends on when during your cycle you were tested. So have you ever heard of the Dutch test?
No.
Okay, I did a little video on it. I think it was last week. I am going to make a note and I'll go tag you on it.
Okay.
What's your last name?
Stone.
I saw it. Wait a minute. Let's see if I can see it down. Stone. Okay,
Stone,
I'm going to go tag you on it. But basically, the Dutch test, it's probably like a more comprehensive test and probably more accurate. And so basically, you get tested between day 19 and 21 of your cycle. Mm-hmm. And it measures estrogen, it measures progesterone, it measures cortisol, it measures testosterone, it measures DHEA. It gives you like a full breakdown of your sex hormones. It'll give you a much better indication of what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah. So unfortunately, as you'll see in the video, it's expensive, and most like a conventional doctor won't do it. Like you need like either a functional medicine practitioner or a naturopath, maybe a chiropractor if they know what they're doing. Yeah. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not covered by our general insurance. Okay.
Okay.
Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Because I feel something's not right. Like I might be normal for the average of everyone, but for me personally, I don't think I'm normal for my body. You know what I mean?
I absolutely do. And I personally believe that if you know something's wrong, something is wrong. Right. Yeah. And oftentimes, like I know a lot of women in perimenopause go see their doctor and their doctor says, no, it's totally normal. You're fine. Here are some antidepressants or whatever. And it's like, no, like if you know something is wrong, you got to figure out. Now, I will tell you that if you do think that there is an imbalance, I do. A lot of women join my program with really bad PMS, and within 3 to 4 weeks, they're like, OMG, PMS totally under control. I had one woman come to me. She's been with me now for about 2 months, maybe 3. And when she first came to me, she had like before she would get her period, like she would literally get, like they call it PMS flu. Like she would be like just like achy, and she'd get a fever, like literally get a fever, and that has cleared up. So your foods and you have a lot of control over it with just naturally, with just food and nutrition and lifestyle. Okay.
Right.
Awesome. Thanks for the question. Any other questions, ladies? I see Jane on Facebook said, I'm on bioidentical estrogen to testosterone, progesterone. Jane, I'll tell you right now, as things start to like plummet for me, I am going to be all about it. In fact, right now I am working with my naturopath to do the Dutch test to figure out if it's time for me to start amping it up a little bit. All right. Any other questions, ladies? I'm 57 and postmenopause. I guess same rules apply. Yeah, so great question. Thanks, Kate. So what can happen is that in postmenopause, you can still be estrogen dominant. And that could be because of lifestyle factors. So I didn't really dive into it today, but because it wasn't really about estrogen dominance, but just know that like when it comes to estrogen dominance, and another big factor is environmental estrogen, all add up. And so we can still have low progesterone in relation to estrogen, even post-menopause when our estrogen levels are quite low. So Yes, I think that's what you're asking, but let me know if you need more clarification there. Okay, let's see if there's any other questions. Could I be on too much estrogen? My physician wants me off them as I'm 60 years of age. Oh, that's a tough one, Jane, because again, like I definitely don't want to position myself as a hormone replacement therapy expert, but what I can tell you is that there are a lot of women in the sort of women's health sphere that would argue that all women should be on bioidenticals, that these hormones have, you know, they protect us. They protect us from heart disease. They protect us from diabetes. They protect us from osteoporosis. Like the estrogen and progesterone, they all play these really important roles. We're at risk of all these different conditions. And there are a lot of women who would argue that we should be on bioidenticals until the day we die. It depends on your doctor. Not everyone would agree. I would say, you know, get a second opinion. Maybe find someone who specializes in hormone replacement therapy. You definitely want to get it checked. Like you want to be working with someone who's not just shoving you with pills or creams, like they're giving them to you and then they're testing to make sure that they've got it right. And they're testing multiple times because your hormones, like they're not static, they are constantly changing. So you need to be constantly assessing. Does that help, Jane? Let me know if that answered that question for you. Again, I certainly don't want to position myself as a hormone replacement therapy expert. I'm just giving you sort of like what I have learned from reading a lot about it. Okay. All right. Any other questions? No other questions? Okay, awesome. Perfect, Jane. Happy that I answered that. All right, ladies, I hope that was helpful. I hope you learned something. If there is a topic that you would like to learn about, I would love you to reach out to me. You can go on Facebook or you can email me and just, you know, send me a DM or send me an email and be like, Haley, would love a workshop on this topic. I'm going to be doing them once a month and it'll be the same kind of format. So hopefully that was helpful. Thank you once again. I'm going to stop share here on Facebook. So bye-bye to everyone